Bitcoin is in free fall. Oh no, it's over. Bitcoin's down 10% today. Oh my goodness, it's down 12% on the week. Oh my goodness, Bitcoin's down 9% on the month. Oh no, look at that crash. Oh my goodness, what's going on? Bitcoin has been ranging sideways for 6 months between the mid 50s to low 70s. And now in the last 3 days, Bitcoin is plummeting as it trends towards zero. The Ponzi is over. The world is collapsing. Oh my goodness. Anyway, yeah, so I don't care. I'm here in a beautiful, nice little cabin. It is a little dark and there's a lot of mosquitoes, so that's a bit annoying. But besides the mosquitoes, beautiful lake, which you can't see because it's night. Beautiful Sunday night. Oh, you probably can't. You can see the tree line a little bit. But anyway, why am I making this video? Because people gonna freak out. And when people gonna freak out, people need to hear the message. What is the message? Don't freak out. That is the message. Thank you. Like, subscribe. Go away. Okay, no, just kidding. What's actually going on? Yeah, so Japan is kind of imploding right now. If you've watched any of my videos, especially some of my older ones, I talked a lot about how Japan, I think, is a very telling example of what many other countries could be going through in the coming 5 to 10 years. So, first of all, what exactly is wrong with Japan? Well, freaking mosquitoes. So what's wrong with Japan is that they have way too much debt. Their sovereign debt to GDP is over 200%. Now, as you've heard me say probably in many other videos before, historically speaking, when a nation state or an empire, it doesn't matter, modern country, former country, 21st century, 20th century, doesn't matter, when any nation state hits over 130% sovereign debt to GDP, 98% of the time, that nation has one of three things: hyperinflation, default, or war within 15 years. Japan actually is, the historic exception to this. Japan, for a variety of economic factors, which we're not going to get into this video, has been the exception to this rule. They have been able to hobble along with over 200 or over 250% sovereign debt to GDP for a long time. However, right now, as I'm recording this, on the other side of the planet, right now it's, for me, Sunday night, over in Japan, over on the other side of the planet, obviously it's a different time of day for them, they're on track to have one of their worst 2-day, 3-day stock trading periods in history. So Japan's kind of having some trouble. And why do the Americans care about Japan? The Americans care about Japan because Japan is the 4th largest central bank in the world. Of course, you have the Federal Reserve of the United States. Beyond that, you have the ECB of Europe, you have the PBOC of China, and then, of course, you have the BOJ of Japan. And so what's going on is that yields on bonds are kind of getting a little bit funky as they're moving around. Of course, the American stock market is reacting in a big way to Japan's stocks reacting, aka collapsing right now. And of course, that impacts everything, right? The price of gold has fallen, $15, $20. The price of Bitcoin has fallen, as I was showing a moment ago, like 10% or so in the last day. So yeah, it's a bit nuts. Now, what I will remind you is that there are many other people in Bitcoin. Ooh, we got some fireworks going off at the distance. That's kind of fitting for this, fireworks. So the first thing to keep in mind is that there are a lot of people in Bitcoin that have probably been in Bitcoin a lot longer than you, been in Bitcoin a lot longer than me, that probably have a lot more money in Bitcoin than you and me, and they're just fine. Today I've been here at this beautiful lake, been enjoying life with a bunch of people, Bitcoiners, Bitcoin OGs, Bitcoin millionaires, multimillionaires, even decamillionaires. Frankly, we don't care, okay? We had pizza this evening, we were on the lake, we ate. I spent most of the day dealing with stupid technical difficulties, but my point is, we don't care, right? The traditional finance world is in kind of... Oh my, that just looks so bad. It's going to be such an interesting morning tomorrow morning when the 9 to 5 stocks wake up. But anyway, when traditional finance wakes up. So yeah, my point is that for us, it doesn't matter. For the rest of the traditional finance world, they have to react. They have to be reactionary because the whole world's debt markets, all the central banks, everything is tied together, right? For the first time in the last 3 years, we've seen global M2 money supply growth actually grow above this 3.5-year channel that we've been just bouncing around in sideways. And last week was the first time it broke that. Do I think it's coincidence that we broke that and now we're having all this, panic from Japan? No, I don't think it's coincidence. How is it connected? I don't really know, because honestly, I've been out here at the lake working and relaxing from the last couple months craziness I've been on. But ultimately, it's all connected, right? When debt in one part of the world impacts debt in another part of the world, and everything kind of freaks out, right? We saw this with Silicon Valley Bank. We saw this in 2020. We saw this in 2008. Is this week going to be a kind of crisis like that? I've got no idea. I don't know. Bitcoin could go down another 10%. It could go back up 10 to 20%. Who knows? I surely don't know. But on the long term, the probability that Bitcoin rises is much higher than the probability of it falling in terms of adoption, in terms of printed currency units in exchange for a certain amount of Bitcoin, as well as in terms of technological progress, right? If you believe, number one, Bitcoin is going to remain decentralized and secure, therefore its adoption is going to go up. And if you believe, number two, we are going to continue to print political currency units at an ever greater exchange rate and ratio for Bitcoin, then you believe it's going to go up in nominal terms. And if you believe in the future, humans are going to produce more technology, more stuff, more human beings, and more innovation, more beautiful little cabins and lake houses, then you should believe that in all three of those metrics, adoption, political currency nominal terms, and technological productivity real terms, in all three of those ways, the bet is in your favor. And so it doesn't matter if it's going to be volatile in the short period, right? One other thing I think it's important to mention too is that this is why, if you're ever tempted to get involved with trading altcoins or trading stocks to try to maximize your Bitcoin alpha and get more Bitcoin, blah, 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 this is the exact kind of risks you could run, right? I've talked to so many people, so many traders and degens that have lost 6 figures, 7 figures, in some cases even 8 figures, okay, tens of millions of dollars on trades because everything was going well, but they didn't see the one thing that got them, right? And when you're trading the altcoins, trying to get more Bitcoin, there's two problems you have. The first problem is what happens if you have something like Japan showing up here. That means that all of a sudden, now you have a global macro event, a black swan thing that you did not anticipate that's going to collapse your coin's exchange value to Bitcoin. So that's your first problem, right? Bitcoin is only down, now it's down only 8 and 0.75%. So already Bitcoin's rebounded another couple percent. Although I do expect it will continue to trend down as the news out of Japan probably gets worse over the course of tonight as I'm sleeping like a baby. But my point is that even though Bitcoin is only down 8%, Ethereum and all the other coins might be down 20%, 30%. I'm sure some of them are going to be down 50% within the next couple days or so. And so I'm not making fun of people that trade like that. I'm just saying that you have to understand there is Bitcoin and there is everything else. Some of the everything else has value. Most of it doesn't. And probably the things that do have value in that everything else category are the stable coins, which of course you're not going to trade for Bitcoin in the first place. So my point is, why would you take on the excess risk when you could just buy and hold the Bitcoin and hold it forever, right? The other problem you have if you're trading those alts is that what happens if Bitcoin skyrockets, right? You have the first black swan of some sort of global macro event like Japanese yields collapsing or something across the ocean on a different time zone. That's your first problem. Your Bitcoin ratio is going to collapse. The second problem is that what happens if a white swan happens? If a white swan happens and Bitcoin magically gaps up, well, then your exchange rate still collapses, right? And see, this is the interesting thing that I think could potentially be happening next bear market. Okay, next bear market, estimated at 2027, if you believe traditional halving cycle theory. What happens if we do have a 70 or so % correction for Bitcoin in real terms, but in nominal terms, we only go down, let's say 20%, because we print so much money that, yes, in terms of gold and real estate and oil, Bitcoin crashes 50, 60, 70%. But from a trader's perspective, it makes less and less sense every single cycle to trade it, because even though the real terms returns are diminishing for Bitcoin, though the nominal terms could just keep going up because we keep depreciating the dollars, meaning therefore it gets only more nonsensical to trade. And so this is my encouragement for this video, is that if you're ever tempted to trade, if people are ever new that you're talking to and want to trade, these mosquitoes are awful. They're absolutely awful. But if you ever are tempted to trade, this is just a reminder that you cannot predict black swans or white swans. It looks like right now we have a big black swan coming. Maybe it'll impact the U.S. in a large way. Maybe it won't. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me because I'm not trading, right? A lot of people right now are seeing that people are being liquidated. People with 6, 7, or 8 figure trades are being liquidated right now because no one ever expected Bitcoin would go down to $53,000 when just yesterday Bitcoin was like $65,000, right? So my point is, have a long-term time horizon. Stay solvent. Don't get liquidated. Don't trade. If you already have begun trading, I encourage you, probably the best decision you can make right now is to get out of the trade, right? Do what you want. It's not financial advice, but in general, even though it's not financial advice, I encourage you, avoid the gambling, avoid the speculation, and have a thesis and stick to it, and don't be emotional. Like, I think that's probably a pretty good reminder for people. So wherever you are in your little degen journey, hopefully you will exit that sooner than later, because things could be happening this week. So I don't know much more what's going to happen. I think Monday morning, which is when you're watching this probably, is going to be very interesting. And I think ultimately the most interesting time period coming along the line is what happens when more and more people realize, Bitcoin is getting decreasingly volatile in real terms. Stocks are getting increasingly volatile in real terms. Why don't I take an allocation of Bitcoin? Because if we ever do pretty much more political currency, the thing that is going to absorb that political currency the best is Bitcoin. See, most people still are viewing Bitcoin as a risk-on asset. Right now, Bitcoin crashing. Many people on Twitter, all the gold bugs and the traditional finance stock bugs, all these people saying, "Oh my goodness, Bitcoin's dead. Store value. Oh, Bitcoin's not a store value. Bitcoin went down in my short time horizon of 72 hours. Look, the maxis are wrong. Sailor was wrong. He's dead. Oh." Right? People are freaking out on Twitter because they have, the time horizon of a goldfish, and they don't understand that Bitcoin, a long-term time horizon, is not a risk-on asset, but a risk-off asset. And so the way you know that you're early to Bitcoin is because most people still view it as a risk-on investment. People still view it as a risk-on asset, right? But here's one final encouragement as I wrap up this rambling little video here, is that we always hear the idea of, Bitcoin is digital real estate. Bitcoin's digital Manhattan. Bitcoin's digital New York, whatever, blah, 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 right? Here's some context, okay? There are 8 billion human beings in the world. There are roughly 8 million people in Manhattan/Greater New York, right? That's about a perfect 1,000 to 1. Okay, what does that make you? What does that make me? If there's approximately 1 million people on the planet that are hardcore Bitcoin holders with self-custody, off exchanges and all that, how many people are there like that? Well, I would say probably about 1 million. Most of the Bitcoiners I've talked to are, in agreement with that. About 1 million people or so that are really, really firmly into Bitcoin. And so here's a question. If we have this metaphor of digital Manhattan, what is that number? Well, 1,000 to 1. What's that number? About 10,000 people. Okay, imagine being so early to Manhattan that you're one of the first 10,000 people on the island, right? That might sound unbelievable, but again, go through the math. What is 10,000 times 1,000? Well, 100,000, million, 10 million, right? Go up, go down, right? It's the same kind of math, right? Actually, no, it's 1,000. If there are 10 million Bitcoiners, then it's 10,000. If there are only 1 million Bitcoiners, then it's 1,000x. Then it's not even 10,000. That's 1,000. So actually, I was too conservative there. That's crazy. But if you believe Bitcoin adopters are somewhere between 1 to 10 million, something like that, then you're probably, we don't know how early you are, but you're probably somewhere between the first 1,000 to 10,000 or so people on the island of Manhattan. So my encouragement is, don't get shaken out of selling your title rights to that strip of land on Manhattan, because in 80 years there might be an Empire State Building built next to it. Yeah, I know in your technological era, like, you're only mentally used to like 7-story tall buildings, like at the absolute tallest. You can't possibly imagine, this small island in this large country becoming the largest city in the country. Oh, and then the country being the most powerful country in the world. And by the way, we'll build a 100-story skyscraper, in just a couple of years, and it will be the world's tallest. Right. So my point is, don't sell the land. Don't sell the land that 2 blocks away you're going to have the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building or Grand Central Station. Whatever famous land. I mean, like, literally, you can't go wrong. Buy a freaking plot of land in Manhattan, and you're going to have a world-famous tourist site within a 5-minute walking distance from you, guaranteed. It's that easy. And so that's the same thing with Bitcoin, right? Is that don't trade it, don't lose it, hold on to it, have a long-term time horizon, and understand that if you're buying Manhattan in the late 1600s, when just 1 to 10, maybe 20,000 people have actually moved onto the island, understand that the fiat political shenanigans, whatever, of the Dutch Empire is completely relevant to you, right? Because again, that's something people forget, okay? What was New York before New York? New Amsterdam, right? Who was the main colonizer of what is now Manhattan? The Dutch, before the British, okay? If you're buying Manhattan and you're bullish on humanity, I think there's going to be more political currency units per square foot of this island. I think that adoption is going to go up. And I think, number 3, that humans are going to be more productive with more human beings in the future. I should hold on to my land on this island for dear life and never sell it, no matter what the debt structures of the Dutch way over in Europe is going to be. And it's the same thing here. Like, why does it matter what the fiat shenanigans of an ancient empire that's not going to, from a monetary sense, exist in a Bitcoin standard? Why does it matter for you, right? So my encouragement is, in the same way as the Manhattan maxis 400 years ago hodled onto their land and their title rights for the island in Manhattan and ignored the political currency shenanigans of the Dutch, which, by the way, the collapse of the Dutch Empire is very interesting. They had their bond market completely written off, or at least half of it completely written off with a single stroke of a pen. 300 years of the Dutch being one of the globally dominant trade empires, just written off with a stroke of a pen. Then what happened from there is that people fled there. They went to France, and then French Revolution. Later on. Point is, it's all just cycles. It's all just history. Japan's freaking out right now. Where's that money going to go? Well, we're going to probably print a bunch of money to bail them out. They're going to probably print a bunch of their own money to bail themselves out. And then in the same way people fled from the Dutch hundreds of years ago to the French and the British and elsewhere, you're probably going to see the same thing here. People are going to flee the Japanese and go to the Americans, right? See, this is why the Americans have interest rates so high and want to have interest rates so high, right? Jerome Powell is playing a $200 trillion game of chicken, right? And Jerome Powell continues to be one of the most powerful people in the entire world. Sorry I'm moving around so much. These mosquitoes are really getting at me. Got him. My point is that Jerome Powell's playing a big game of chicken. Why? Because by Jerome Powell he's crushing the economy globally by skyrocketing interest rates and the scarcity of the U.S. political currency unit for this period of time. Yes, he's hurting the dollar. Yes, he's hurting the American business. Yes, he's hurting American middle class. But guess what? He's hurting the rest of the world more. He's hurting the Japanese more. He's hurting people in Africa more, people in Europe more, people in the rest of Asia more. Everyone else in the world is having a greater amount of suffering under high interest rates and inflation than America, right? And so, see, this is the problem with political currency. This is the problem with fiat currency, is that fiat currency is not a free market. And so what do we have to do? We have to enforce contrived, made-up, arbitrary rules to stoke demand for the dollar, right? After COVID, after the lockdowns, after we printed a bunch of money, what did we have to do? We had to prevent people from freaking out with the possibility that the dollar was just going to continue to debase, that it was going to just continue printing, right? What did we have to do? We had to stoke demand for dollars. And how do we do that? We skyrocket interest rates. We make the dollar artificially more scarce, even though it's not sustainable. Everybody knows it's not sustainable. Jerome Powell knows it's not sustainable, right? Okay, we are now paying more in interest on our bonds than the entire U.S. military-industrial complex, the entire military, even though our military is many times larger than what it needs to be, especially in relation to our allies around the world, right? Our military is way larger than it needs to be, number one. It's way more inefficient than it needs to be, number two. And yet, number three, our interest payments are still higher than all of that expense. So everyone knows it's not sustainable, but yet it still keeps going on because everybody knows that, yes, the dollar is not sustainable under these crazy interest rates and monetary policy that's super, super tight, but all the other political currencies are even less sustainable. And so the dollar is the least rotten egg in a basket of 120 other very, very rotten eggs, right? And this is what we're seeing right now with Japan, their stock market and their bonds and the yields, the currency, whatever, all the things that are crashing, all the numbers that are moving. That's what we're seeing, right? And so my guess is that's probably what we're going to see. We're probably going to see a little bit of chaos and conundrum in the same way 400 years ago. We see, the Dutch having problems, and so people leave the Dutch and go to the French. My point is there a reason all this is happening? Yes. Do you need to go down that rabbit hole and spend your life trying to figure out what exactly the reason was that this is happening now? No, probably not. Probably you can just live your life. You can focus on more important things like killing the mosquitoes that won't stop biting you, and going out and enjoying a beautiful lake with friends and, pizza and beer and everything else we were enjoying today, jet skis, paddle boards, whatever. That's probably what you should spend your time on, because there's always going to be political currency shenanigans, and ultimately the best idea is not worry about, or the Dutch or the British or the French, which one of their blah, 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 don't worry about it, okay? Are those monetary systems going to be around in 400 years? No, they're not. Okay, well, I guess the British pound is still around, even though the pound's down like 99.9% over the last 400 years. But my point is, don't focus on the things you can control. Focus on the things you can control. And the thing you can control is your emotions in regard to how you're holding your rights to the island of Manhattan. So take a deep breath. You're probably not freaking out if you've been in Bitcoin this long, but if you are freaking out, remember, he just landed on my head, didn't he? Get off my head. Get off. Get away. Just remember that this island of Manhattan, where 8 million people in the future are going to live, and they're going to have technology way more advanced than anything you can imagine. They're going to build buildings and world tourist sites, literally, where you walk by every single day. You're walking around. Right now it's a dirt road. There's a little church. There's a little hut there. You have your butcher, whatever. Okay, this is going to be a bustling mega metropolis with metal boxes flying through tubes hundreds of feet under your feet, and other metal tubes in the sky flying. It's like, you can't imagine the productivity of the future. You will not believe how many political currency units we will print into the future, and you cannot fathom just how many more humans are going to be, right? Again, you're one of the first 1 to 10,000 or so people on the island of Manhattan, right? How early are you? I don't know. Nobody knows, but you're somewhere like that. You are clearly very, very early. To how early is anybody's guess, but you're very, very early. And just understand that you're so early that you haven't even encountered the Revolutionary War yet, right? Okay, by the time the Revolutionary War came around, there were many more people than are currently on the island right now. You are so early to Manhattan that you have not yet been incorporated into the United States yet, because the United States doesn't exist yet, because you've not had the Revolutionary War yet, because we're predominantly under a Dutch influence, not a British influence yet. That is how early you are, right? And so likewise with Bitcoin, if you're scared because of this price volatility, I encourage you to have a long time preference, right? And understand that probably a lot of crazy stuff's going to be coming, right? This little Dutch debt fiasco that's going on right now, that's just the beginning of it, okay? What's coming down the line is when the British take over. Then after the British take over, the Americans are going to take over the British. We're going to have this huge big war. It's going to be chaotic. Then we're going to have the hyperinflation of the U.S. continental political currency in 1779. Then we're going to have a new political currency called the U.S. dollar. Then we're going to have 2 different central banks. Both of those central banks are going to get the boot. Then we're going to have a 3rd central bank called the Federal Reserve, established in 1913. Then we're going to have, all these other kinds of monetary errors. 44, Bretton Woods, and 71 with the Nixon shock, right? It's like, you are so early to Manhattan, you shouldn't freak out about this one little political currency, my yield curve's freaking out, my recession, Bitcoin's dead, right? You're going to have 3, 4, 5 different eras of political currency in just the next couple hundred years, for the Manhattan example. But in the Bitcoin example, my point is, this might be a big crisis, this might not be a big crisis, I don't know, and I don't care. Because your expectation should be there are only going to be more big crises. And because of that, you probably shouldn't trade. You probably shouldn't use leverage. You probably should not be using altcoins. You probably shouldn't be doing those things. You should probably have a long-term time horizon. You should probably take volatility as the assumption. And it's nonsensical to think there's not going to be volatility, right? If you think we're going from 0.1% adoption to 100% adoption, there's going to be volatility. If you think we're going to print more and more political currency, there's going to be volatility. And if you think we're going to have more and more technological progress, there's going to be volatility, right? So that's my encouragement. I'm kind of blabbering on at this point, but hopefully it's been a little bit useful, especially if you're freaking out by the volatility of Bitcoin. As we wrap up this video here, I'm going to check one more time to see what Bitcoin's doing. Let's see what you're doing, Biddy. Let's see what you're doing. Let's see if we're up in the time of this video or down. Not really. We're back now, down under 10% again. I don't know how visible that is on camera there, but yeah, we're back down 10%. We're recording this Sunday night. Monday morning is going to be quite the party. So anyway, that's my encouragement. Have a long-term time horizon. You're one of the first 1,000 to 10,000 people on the island of Manhattan. Hold on to it. Don't worry about what the Dutch are doing, because the French are going to follow the Dutch in Europe. The British are going to follow the Dutch here in America. Actually, you don't even know that America is America yet. But, my point is, it's going to be a long road. Bitcoin's going to take probably a couple decades to become, globally understood as the index for human productivity. And it's cheap. It's super cheap under $1 million. It's super cheap under $5 million. It's super cheap right now. You're not too late. Yeah, you were not the first person to find Manhattan. You weren't even in the first 100 people to find Manhattan. But you're, 1,000, it's not bad. 10,000 is not bad. There's literally 7.99, potentially 7.999 million more people to follow you. And every single one of those people uses way more energy and has way more technological progress that they're stewarding than you could possibly imagine. So zoom out, have a long-term time horizon. It's going to be a fun week. I probably won't do many macro updates this week because I'm busy living my life and taking a break. I've been traveling basically nonstop for 6 months. So, some of you probably need to do that too, right? Get your head out of the doom scrolling, get your head out of the news cycle. Zoom out, live your life. So anyway, with that said, mosquitoes are eating me alive. So please like, comment, subscribe, do all the wonderful things. I'm literally giving blood right now for making this video. So if you appreciate me donating blood and time, and it's very late, so I'm quite tired too. So if you appreciate me donating sleep and blood, where's that mosquito? Yeah, I've gotten so many bites. But yeah, please subscribe, please like, please do all the things because, anyway, blood in the markets, blood from my body, and life goes on.